Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for SAS's Winter 2023 Learning from Experience event to hear about the opportunities our students have undertaken for their experiential learning requirement to develop their skills. Some, I'm sure, will also talk about how their experiences have impacted on their career paths. Before we begin the presentations, I want to, or I will ask Dr. Arasuksi, our beloved director, to give the land acknowledgement.
Hi, everyone, and welcome from me as well. It's just so nice to see everybody on screen, both the students and the guests. And I'm here to acknowledge that SAS's home, Western University, is located on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenapewauk, and Chinonton nations on lands that are connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. By recognizing Indigenous peoples' relationships to this land, our intention is to make explicit Indigenous peoples' ongoing presence, their rights to self-determination, and our responsibilities to uphold those rights, to contribute to the work of truth and reconciliation, and to celebrate, honor, and educate ourselves about Indigenous cultures. We acknowledge sacred teachings such as love, respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth to guide our approach to furthering equity, diversity, and inclusion at Western for the benefit of all. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sarah. So just I'd like to say a few things before I turn it over to the presenters. As always, I want to thank the students' employers and supervisors for giving them the opportunity to show what they can do, for sharing their time and expertise, for mentoring our students, and for working with me to allow the students to count their experiences for academic credit. We really appreciate your time and efforts and your wisdom, and so nice to see some of you here today. To the students, I know how hard you've worked, juggling your academics, your extracurriculars, and your work experiences. 201, you've conducted yourselves professionally, you've impressed your supervisors and your colleagues, and you've enhanced your own SAS's and Western's reputation. So thank you. I really do appreciate your efforts. I'm so very proud of you all. And so glad you have this opportunity to share your impressive and inspiring experiences with SAS's supporters and your fellow students. I'll remind you about the ground rules. So each student has 7 minutes to present. For students presenting on one experience, you have up to 30 seconds grace. After that 7 minutes, for students presenting on 2 experiences, we'll give you up to 2 minutes grace. Jen will give you a warning when you have 30 seconds left in your grace period. After each presentation, you'll have 3 minutes for Q&A. Also today, we have 7 of you, so I don't think we'll take a break halfway through. We should be only around an hour and a half today, so we'll push through. I know it's a really busy time for you guys and us all. So we'll get started with the presentations. And first up today then is Angelina Havaras. Angelina has 2 experiences to tell us about. One with the Morissette Institute of Entrepreneurship at Western, and the other with STEAM education. Angelina.
Yeah, thank you so much, Barb. I'm just going to share my screen. I should have permission to. Okay, see if we can get this into view. Sorry, all the controls are at the top. Okay, perfect. Right. Can everyone see me and hear me? Okay, amazing. I'm just going to check. Okay, perfect. It works. All right. Am I good to start?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to those of you who are able to come. My name is Angelina Havaras, and today I'm here to present my EL experiences. So for my EL credit, I completed 2 experiences. The first one was with Morset Institute for Entrepreneurship, and the second was with STEAM Education Center. I'm going to start off by talking about Morset. So for those of you who don't know, Morset is an organization that's partnered with Ivy. They help aspiring entrepreneurs by coaching them and giving them opportunities to be seen by investors. My role at Morset was as a creative content developer, but I also did a lot of administrative work. So I included communications in my role. For instance, I updated the organization's databases on Western and Ivy alumni who've created startups. However, I also completed tasks such as interviewing entrepreneurs for different projects and creating social media posts. So one of the highlights of my time with Morset was getting to interview Cara Mo, one of the co-founders of a company called Monist. Monist is a company that allows you to make informed decisions about which brands to shop from through what's called a brand performance, which consists of the following: diversity and inclusion, worker exploitation, waste and pollution, and ethical sourcing. So here I've listed Monist brand performance of Aritzia, and as you can see, once you break it down, they are the industry average, which honestly isn't saying much. You can also compare different brands to see which are more ethical. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about Monist because I thought they were really cool, and I learned a lot from my interview with Cara. And one of the other things I did during my time with Morset was create social media posts to promote their podcast, the Entrepreneur Podcast. One of their guests was David Patrell Evans, who founded Good Life Fitness. And so I created some posts to promote the podcast. So now I want to talk about challenges and obstacles I faced and had to overcome during my time with Morset. The biggest one was developing good time management skills. I'll be honest, administrative tasks aren't always the most exciting, and so it's easy to put them off. However, I learned early on that I needed to manage my time wisely. Another thing I needed to work on was not being afraid to take initiative and pitch ideas to my supervisor. This was more of a challenge in the first semester, but during the second semester, I took more initiative by suggesting ideas for projects that I could do based on the skills I already had. So now for some reflections. Initially, I thought I would be doing more content development with Morset. However, even though things turned out differently than I anticipated, I learned or got to develop really useful soft skills from doing more administrative tasks. These included, but are not limited to, paying greater attention to detail, gaining proficiency in Google Sheets, self-discipline to complete quote-unquote mundane tasks, and how to do research more effectively. I also gained a deeper appreciation for entrepreneurship and the work that goes into creating startups. Overall, I'm really grateful I got to work for an organization like Morset. So now I am going to be talking about my second EL credit. I worked with STEAM education, and you might be asking yourself, what is STEAM? So STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So think STEM, but with the inclusion of art. STEAM Education Center combines all 5 subjects to encourage kids to develop creative problem-solving skills and encourage curiosity about how things work through workshops, school visits, and summer camps. For my role of STEAM, I was the social media intern. I mainly created posts and reels featuring different STEAM experiments, but I also took on other tasks, such as writing media advisories. So here are some photos from my time with STEAM. The first 2 are experiments. The first one is from an experiment where I put a glass over a candle to extinguish a flame. And during the experiment, I wondered what would happen if I removed the glass before the flame completely extinguished. I theorized that the flame would burn again if it had access to oxygen, but that wasn't the case. The flame just completely extinguished. So the project didn't go how I wanted it to, but it got me to think, and I think that's the spirit of STEAM. The second photo on the right is from a reel I created where I created flowers from coffee filters. I had a very specific vision for how I wanted the reel to turn out. However, because you can only edit so much in Canva when it comes to video editing, I couldn't do exactly what I initially envisioned and had to get creative and work with the tools they had. However, it all worked out and I'm very happy with the results. And then there's a photo of me with Canva because everything is created in Canva. So the biggest challenge from my time with STEAM was brainstorming content for each week. STEAM posts during school week of Monday to Friday. So I had to come up with content for 5 days, which in theory doesn't sound hard. But since STEAM education is kind of niche, you have to get creative when it comes to brainstorming content. Another challenge was finding experiments with minimal prep. As a university student trying to save money, I wanted to find experiments that wouldn't break the bank and that were also doable time-wise. Another big challenge was learning how to create new kinds of content. So prior to working at STEAM, I had never made a TikTok before, unless you count that one Musically I made in high school. And I'm a Gen Z kid, so I should know how to make a TikTok. But In all honesty, it wasn't a steep learning curve. It's just that the first TikTok I made was in CapCut, which is this other app. So I had to find a template to use, upload it to CapCut, create it in CapCut, and then save it as a draft in TikTok. And that was an experience. So to summarize my time with STEAM, here are the following lessons I learned. Brainstorming is time consuming, especially when it's just you. Make sure to budget time for brainstorming. And then another thing that I learned was to communicate with others to solve problems and troubleshoot any issues that come up. I would say that my time with Morset really improved my communication skills. So for when I came to STEAM and needed to communicate with one of the staff members to help me with a problem while my supervisor was away. And then finally, never stop being curious. Going back to the candle experiment, it didn't go as I planned, but it was because I had a different idea and wasn't afraid to see what would happen if I did things a bit differently. It's easy to want to conform to how everyone else lives, but if you're never curious about anything or trying anything new, then you're never going to learn anything new about yourself. So I call this section looking back and moving forward. So looking back on my time with Morset and STEAM, while I don't think I want a full career in social media management going forward, I wouldn't mind creating content as a temporary job or as a freelancer. Both Morset and STEAM allowed me to try new things. And for that, I'm forever grateful that I had the opportunity to try things I probably wouldn't have had done otherwise. And then finally, no matter what career I end up in, the skills I've learned from both positions are highly transferable and can be applied to many different careers. So thank you to everyone for listening to my presentation, and I will open the floor to questions.
Thank you, Angelina. That was great. Thank you for starting us off so well. I just need to change my view so I can see everybody. There we go. So do we have any questions? Okay, so I'll start us off with questions today. Angelina, I was wondering especially since, you were talking about, these aren't necessarily the jobs don't represent the career paths that you want. What is your advice to other students who have yet to do their EL?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think my advice would be to approach it with an open mind. Like I said, I think with creative content development and just the fact that there's so much within that job that requires so many different soft skills, be open to learning new stuff. I think I really do enjoy creating content. I think it's just I think when thinking of a full-time career, I might want to try some other things before being certain. And I think, yeah, just being open to the possibility that well, it's good to have a set plan, things can change and that's totally okay. That's totally normal. It's very normal for people. No matter how old you are, but definitely when you're in your early 20s to just try new things and see what works and what doesn't. And you'll learn more about yourself. And there are definitely different things from different internship, both Morset and STEAM that I kind of learned that I liked. I found when was at Morset, I really liked interviewing people. And so that's something I want to keep developing as a skill. And then with STEAM, honestly, I haven't done any science since high school. So a lot of the experiments were definitely a new thing, I want to say, but I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed the challenge of trying stuff that's a little bit out of what the norm of what I normally do. And just, yeah. And the fact that I think a lot of experiments did provoke my own curiosity too. I think it was really effective and really cool to see that. And how curiosity is such a good skill to have no matter what field you go into.
Yes, absolutely. Michael.
I wanted to ask about the science piece because that's something we don't do a lot of in SASA, though we are open to it, obviously. When you were thinking of experiments, what did you do? Did you Google this? How did you spark your creativity and imagination? What process did you follow there?
Ooh, that's a good question. I did do a lot of Googling just for ideas and just for material, based on what materials I had or anything. So if I had cardboard tubes that could be recycled, I was why not just use them for a project and then recycle them after or something like that? Because then I'm not like creating more waste or anything like that. But yeah, I think most of it was just through like a lot of Googling and then doing like research on like what other people have done. And then I think there were definitely times where like I would put my own twist on it, like with the candle one. Didn't originally think like I was going to take off the glass before like the flame like extinguished. That was just kind of in the moment like thought of like, oh, what if this happened? And so I think the process was kind of just like pretty similar, I think, to how I do a lot of research, is just like looking, getting ideas, and then kind of trying to figure out what works based on what I have or what I know I can do, and like knowing myself and how much I can handle, and like what like, and also another thing too is like, if I can understand the experiment, like then like anyone can, because like, you know, like even though I do like science and stuff, you know, I can't do really complex like, you know, formulas or look at like these really complex like biosystems or like anything like that. So it was like, I think about like teaching myself as well throughout the process. So I think it was like, that was part of the learning process, was also teaching myself. And I think that was also a really good experience.
That's great, Angelina. Thank you so much. We'll move on. Is Asif? Oh yeah, there you are. Hi. So our next presenter is Asif Kher. Asif undertook an internship with the Forest City Film Festival last summer and fall. And for this term, he developed his own creative writing project under the mentorship of writer Daryl Sneath. Asif.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Let me just get my screen shared here. And while I'm doing that, let me just ask out of curiosity, do we have anybody here in the crowd that's from the Forest City Film Festival? Good for us. Okay, then we're okay. Yeah, let's get this on the screen. Can everybody see what I'm seeing in the way that you're supposed to be seeing it? Okay, awesome. So my name is Asif Kher Mohammed. Let me just start my timer here. Kher Mohammed, that's 2 words, 1 last name. I don't have a middle name. I don't know what that would be for. I'm in 5th year, so I'm doing a dual degree with Ivy and with SASA, and on the SASA side, I'm doing a double major with philosophy. So it really is about time that I'm in front of all of you and presenting this. So I hope you enjoy, and I know that the Forest City Film Festival is maybe a little beaten to death. A lot of us have done it, so hopefully I can give a little bit of a different color to that experience, and hopefully I can fit all of this into 7 minutes. So let's just jump right into it. At the Forest City Film Festival last summer, at the end of the summer and into the beginning of the year up to October, I was a marketing concierge intern. So what does that lovely title mean? It means that I acted as a personal concierge for 10 film directors. 2 of them were for full features, and then the rest were for like short films and stuff like that. So, you know, you're not supposed to say it out loud, but you know, you can kind of pretend like you have, you know, 2.5 really, because it's the 2 that matter. So, and the whole job there is you're supposed to deliver a really good submission and networking experience for those directors, not just for the feature ones, and obviously also for your short film directors. You want to get those people involved and get different circles mixing, and hopefully get the art scene popping off here in London and in Southern Ontario, because that's their focus. And I worked on a team of interns. There was honestly way more of us than there needed to be, which I'll talk about. To manage social media accounts, plan and execute marketing campaigns, and realistically just to do whatever people who are actually getting paid, you know, couldn't do, or you know, just making up for not paying overtime. So let's talk about some of the things that happened at the film festival. So some of the good. I'm sure you've heard many times over and over. Practicing social media content creation. For me, that was really good. Again, I'm Gen Z. I'm 5th year though. I was born in 1999. So obviously I'm still very young and still very into it, but I realized that even me, I'm actually too old for TikTok. I can't do it. So that was one really good thing I learned about this internship, is that like, I've always had the mentality I can drop into anything and sort of figure it out as I go. But in real life, I can never be a social media marketing coordinator. I can never be anything that ends in coordinator, probably. So that was super good to know about myself. The bad. So yeah, that like I mentioned earlier, the festival has too many intern positions. A lot of us are there to I don't know. I guess just be there just in case. So that's definitely one of the takeaways I'd say from the entire experience, was that to some degree you feel a little bit like you're there for the ride. But that's okay, especially given that a lot of the interns were a lot younger. So that was another way that I was able to make more of that experience for myself, was interacting with a lot of younger SASA students, because I don't get a chance to talk to them all the time. And then also being able to develop a little bit of leadership skills on that team, and try to stand out in what ways I could, right? Because I just felt a lot of the time like I was like this guy, just sort of standing there. And yeah, let's keep this half of it short and sweet. The ugly, let's get one of them for EDI. Now, this story, I won't name names. I won't say where, when, what we were planning or whatever. It's, big deal, small deal, whatever. But we were on a Zoom meeting, ironically, in a city named London, Ontario, Canada, talking about Indigenous things. And then, something along the lines of, we've already got an LGBT person. Let's get an Indigenous. Those are the exact words. This isn't from an intern. This isn't someone from Western or whatever. But it's just sort of a reality of life. When you're out here in Canada, in the corporate world, in the business world, you're doing internships, you're doing jobs. You're gonna bump into people that they have an equity, diversity, and inclusion diploma from a place, again, very ironically, is called Western University, right? So it's being realistic, I think, is the ugly, and having that chip on your shoulder going into things, knowing what your values are, is important. But it's also like, as you get older, you have to choose your hills to die on, if that makes sense. And Forest City Film Festival is not where I'm going to die. So as I did love it, and it was really fun. It was an important experience for me. But being a fifth year student and being in there and getting to see that, definitely one of the really important takeaways for me was just seeing that in the world. You really have to think about what you're doing, what it means to you, and go further than just, this is what my job description says, so I'm okay. There's a lot of accountability to picking your own career, really. So that was probably the biggest takeaway from there. And so running out of time, let me just jump into mood board. And mood board is something that came out of my brain, I think, in semester 1 at some point. It's on my wall over there. It's a bunch of sticky notes under a banner that says mood board, and then it transformed into this strange novelette project thingy that is a fiction. It's written to be read like a fiction story, like a little novel, but it's written in verse. So it's like, because I came from poetry, this is my first pass at being a novelist, and I really tried to take my poetic style that I even use when I write other things, and just like lyrics really important to me when I write, and incorporate that. And that was probably one of the big focuses here. And overall, the entire goal of the project was to produce somewhere between 15 and 20,000 words of a finished project. I'm not disappointed to say I'm not there yet. I'm actually happy to say it, because I've got about, I think, 7,000 really good ones, and I've got another, 10,000 whatever words. So like I'm at 17,000, but to be honest, at this point, in full candor, the project didn't get 100% completed. But I do have this right here, which is a little novelette in print. It's 48 pages, the first part of the total story. And it does work as a standalone little story. I'll just read back to you guys very quickly. Latif is a fifth-year student at Western University in London, Ontario, Canada, and a paradigm degenerate. In his last year and on the way out, Lat faces a challenge that might send him home early. In this ultra-short format novel, Lat must face off with growing into adulthood. He explores what it means to be Gen Z, exactly what he can get away with, and what being successful means to him. So I'm just going to read you a really quick little excerpt from page 3, just to end us off here, because I'm out of time. And here we go. Approximately 80 faces on the brink of catatonia stare the pearman dead in the face as he comes to the culminating stroke. If you're afraid of being fired, you'll never love your job. To no reaction whatsoever, unblinking, he simply follows with, "Are we okay to skip the break? I'm trying to wrap up the semester and get us out of here." And the slideshow must go on. The more I think about it, the more I realize that the value of my interaction with Ivy Business School is access and accreditation. Over and over, they posture students up and teach us to speak, like Eliza in My Fair Lady. What, I must ask, does society get for the careful orchestration of the annual Ivy to consultant pipeline? McKinsey poisoning and sedating an entire society with oxy and perks while improving inclusivity. I can't take anything in one of these lecture halls seriously anymore, not since I had to sit through a class discussion about said opioid crisis. And as I sat there, some skinwalker who calls himself my peer explained to the class that Purdue Pharma's evil intentions ought not pervert the pure practice of consulting, which according to this fellow is simply an ambivalent tool capable of maximizing and making efficient any endeavor, and therefore addicts like my brother are unfortunate but acceptable sacrifices to the machine. And everybody knows that, and the slideshow must go on. That is an excerpt from the beginning, and I'm out of time, so that's that.
Thanks, Asif. I'll get you to maybe stop sharing so we can see the gallery, and then I can see if there are any questions.
Okay, that would be right here. Okay.
Okay. And back. Era.
Thanks so much, Asif. I, as always, really appreciate and enjoy your frankness and your full picture. And I also want to thank you very much for finding this under my door when I came into the office, and I've started reading it. It's great, recognizably great. I wanted to just ask you about, like you talked at the very end about how you had a particular goal for the novella, and in terms of a word count, but then what you ended up with was a different number of really good words. And I wonder if you could just maybe say a little bit more about that as a takeaway, and what you might do differently for your next writing project, or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could spend the whole 7 minutes talking about this, because this ended up becoming probably the most important dimension or feature of this project for me, is because in the outset, I had this idea that I want to produce something, right? And then it was sort of like the wrong approach to take, if that makes sense. And when I started writing it and working with Mr. Sneath, with Daryl, over time, it ended up becoming less an exercise in production, more an exercise in self-editing was the real skill that I needed to pick up. And actually the book that you're holding it's a little bit rushed, to be honest with you. This isn't perfectly tight in the way that I want it to be yet, but that's something that's, has become more important than reaching a total length. And the other thing that I realized about this, mini text is that it's meant for Generation Z. It's by and for Generation Z, and we can't focus on anything, So 7,000 words is kind of perfect for us, right? And it's mentioned in there a few times. So I think going forward, I'm going to continue this project for sure, and I want to see where completion takes me. But I'm more than happy with deleting everything past 7,000 words and focusing from there. At this rate, but right now I just want to focus on the production thing, get to the end of the story, and then continue paring down from there. But again, I wouldn't be unhappy if this is, so to speak, the end of the story.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Asif?
I don't know how to put up my hand. But
Go ahead, Laura. Yep.
Listen, apparently I need somebody to teach me how to do basic functionality on Zoom. I'm curious. So what I'm taking away from the film festival experience is that some of your values, there was a misalignment between some of your values and the values of some of the people you were working with at the film festival. So, and I'm curious, it sounds like there were things that you liked about it. Mm-hmm. Overall, sounded like it was a solid B.
Well, Sorry, go ahead.
I was just curious if it gave you some pause to reflect on what you might want to do next then. I mean, you seem really passionate about writing. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, if not that, what did you learn about yourself in terms of what you might like to do next in the arts, out of the arts, corporate world, not corporate world?
So, yeah, I wonder how what I say next lands. The film festival experience was actually an A+. It wasn't really a B, and that's a good thing for the film festival, but a bad thing for the world, because what that means is that like it's an A+ because that's just something you bump into, period, right? Like it's not like that's it's really like I've been talking about for the past 5 years in my education here. Those challenges we face aren't going to be solved overnight, and they're not going to be solved by me being inflammatory, right? In a corporate meeting, and so knowing that going forward means that, okay, for one, as you've detected, I'm not a fan of working in the corporate world, but I also know that I need to eat food and I need to live and do what I need to do. And I'm okay with that. So the realization is not so much about, okay, I'm never going to do it. It's more about, well, now I just know that it's not going to be what my life is about. Not for me. Not when I go home. Not when somebody asks me, what do you do? I'm never going to say so-and-so coordinator, so-and-so administrator. What I do with my time is I like to, watch people and write things and read and all kinds of things that real people do, right? Nobody spends their time coordinating. Not really. So that's sort of what I meant there. You know, when I was speaking about the film festival in what obviously is going to come off as negative terms, but it's really sort of a learning experience about reality, and that's reflected in how I'm going to approach the business world too. So yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents on that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Asif.
Thank you.
Very powerful. Thank you. Okay, our third presenter today is Bridget Koza. Somehow, between her classes and coursework, her time in the pool, a recent car accident, and her time devoted to her art, Bridget worked as a digital media designer for Western's Instructional Technology Resource Center, ITRC. Bridget.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted and this is the wrong slide. Hello, everyone. So I'm just gonna get started here. All right, so thank you for all coming to see my presentation. I'm going to share about my experience as a digital media designer at the Instructional Technology Resource Center here at Western. And I've been at the ITRC since 2020, but I had to leave over the summer and then I came back because I really loved my experience at the ITRC and I just wanted to kind of continue that journey that I had experienced since second year. So if I reference stuff from 2020, but just note that I've been here for a while. So what is the ITRC? The ITRC supports faculty in integrating technology into their courses. So we use digital media resources. We help instructors prepare their sites for OWL, and we help provide information on many things. Oops. And basically I came into the ITRC when the pandemic hit and we had to integrate a lot of the courses online. So kind of the first thing I started doing was just importing sites into OWL and getting content online. So a lot of the things I quickly learned was that our goals and outcomes at the ITRC are to improve our technical skills. So coming into it, I thought I would just be doing graphic design or doing like drawings, but it was a lot more than that. I ended up doing web design, multimedia communication, such as videos and sound and animation, and then also just got to use lots of software at the ITRC. In addition, we do get to work a lot on our practical skills. So in our groups at the ITRC, we have a team lead that basically helps coordinate projects, but within the projects, we work with other student designers. And through these projects, we build really good communication skills. We also build good customer service skills when we're talking to our professors and teaching them how to use our skills, our online media and e-learning content. We also have great time management. So I've come out of this with such good practical skills. And lastly, at the ITRC, we're really advocates for a healthy work environment. So everyone there is super inclusive. Like everyone asks if you need water, like every hour, or if you need to go for a walk, or if you want to go across the street for a coffee. Everyone's very inclusive in the environment, which I really appreciate. And it just makes you more, I don't know, you're allowed to, it makes you able to approach people more and rely on people and depend on people because you've built this great relationship with your coworkers. So the relationships, speaking of relationships, the people that I communicate with on a daily are the digital media designers who are like me, students in school. We also have our digital media specialists who are post-grad internships, which, by the way, for all those post-grads in the audience, soon to be post-grads, the position is now open. If you want to apply for it, definitely go do that because they're only open for a short amount of time. And then also our e-learning team members who are in charge of supervising the projects, our professors, instructors, grad students, our client services with the Center for Teaching and Learning, continuing studies, distance studies, and even Western libraries. So let's get into like what I did. One of the first projects where I kind of had full creativity was on this biolab storyline, which kind of emerged out of the pandemic when these online science labs needed to have an online option. So that's when I created these biolabs, which was a little bit of a struggle because I kind of had to design all the graphics by hand because there was literally no pipette graphics or like anything to help. So a lot of it was like my hand drawing. I also got to choose the color palette, the fonts, everything from start to finish. And then it ended up being a real success with the client. And yeah, it was really long and hard, but it was definitely worth it. Another thing that I ended up doing was Nomica, and I was on Nomica for like the longest time. I literally was on Nomica for like, I think about 2 years now. And basically it started out with just, my first thing was to do kind of a style guide. So I designed all the fonts, colors, typography, and how everything would be laid out in the lecture videos. So I was kind of excited to do this, and I spent a lot of time preparing the style guide because Nomica was just it was a big group project. So we had to make sure there was a lot of consistency throughout the project, and I was kind of in charge of making sure that consistency stayed. Another thing, obviously I did a lot of graphics because that's kind of my specialty at the ITRC, is just creating graphics on Adobe Illustrator and for the diagrams. So now this course, I should mention, it's also, it's called Connecting for Climate Change Action. It's not actually called Nomica, it's just the name we give all of our projects. So Connecting for Climate Change Action is about teaching climate change through an Indigenous perspective. And so we actually had an Indigenous artist, Holly Pitchett, make all of the graphics for this course. I did some of the graphics in between, but Holly did a lot of them. And then it was my job to animate all of Holly's art, which was also just like the hardest thing I've ever done because it's just the layers of animation, like you have to layer everything and it's just a drawing that I have to like divide into layers. And it took a long time. Like each video was probably 10 minutes long, and there was 4 videos in each module, and there were 6 modules. So it took a long time. I definitely think this was like the hardest thing, but it showed me a lot about how to be a good animator. And then the last thing I did was also web design. So I designed with CSS the OWL site and how it would look to fit the aesthetic of the course. Yeah, so I made it look really good at the end. So in the end, the biolab ended up showing professors that you can do like a hybrid method for these science courses. So I think that was a really good success. Nomica actually ended up receiving 2 scholarships from eCampus and Coursera. So currently we're working on like moving the course to different platforms, not just OWL. And then the best practice videos that I'm working on right now are also becoming a good transition for professors to rent out equipment from the ITRC and make it easier for them to use that equipment if they need it. Yeah, and so what's come out of this has been like, I can't believe what I've become after my experience at the ITRC. I've never thought I would be into video production or film, but I've gotten so much experience with the studio space and the equipment we have at the ITRC. Also, audio production. I did my final SASA capstone project as a podcast, and I don't think I would have been able to do that without my experience at the ITRC and like my experience with audio production. And then also web design and project management have just like, I never thought I would be able to do that kind of stuff. And so now it's kind of like changing the trajectory of my life. I think, well, Dina knows that like a lot of the students that come into the ITRC just change their trajectory of life. Like they come in from a psychology background and end up being a photographer. So like for me, I'm now thinking like, oh, I could be in journalism, social media marketing, graphic design, and communications, and stuff that I never would have thought coming into the ITRC. So I think that's it for now. I think I also talked way too fast, so that might have been faster than 7
No, you
minutes.
did a great job. Bridget.
Okay.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, do we have any questions for Bridget? I'll jump. Oh, Deanna.
Hi, thanks, Bridget, for your presentation, and thanks for all the work that you've done in the ITRC. You've been an incredible addition to our team. What I'm wondering about is, you've talked a lot about the job skills that you learned through the ITRC, but do you think that the ITRC changed how you approach your learning as a student, because you really get to see behind the curtain of how, you know, learning content is designed?
Yes, I definitely think so, because I was kind of saying this in my EL reflections that like I now kind of appreciate profs, like I kind of appreciate profs more like when I hand in assignments. Obviously I want them to be on time, so that I can like put them, I like when I get content from professors, I'm like, okay, we got to get this like all together. And so I kind of realized like, oh, if it's something's late, then we can't like put it up like on time. So dealing with also professors who like hand in their stuff late, like I now see as a student like how annoying it is as a professor if a student hands in stuff late. I think that's like the main thing. Also just like I approach projects in a more creative sense. Like I'll do something completely out of the ordinary because I'll just like, I know how to use video now. Like I can use all these different types of media for my artwork or for my projects that I never thought I would be able to do. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Bridget.
Sarah.
Yeah, hi. I'm going to try not to ask a question every single time, but I guess first of all, I wanted, Dina, thank you so much for being here. It's really nice to have you as a guest on the screen, and Bridget, you know, I can certainly attest as a professor who had to switch so quickly when the pandemic started and did a tier 1 total overhaul of a course for the Classics 2200, and your name was there in the background, and you know, it's so reassuring. There's no way we could have done that. No way we could have done it without you and the team, and it made such a difference to us. So you know, just the value of the work that you did is incredible.
I learned a lot about Greek mythology.
And I did want to say also that as your 4th year capstone instructor, I could see how this work has enhanced what you're doing in the classroom as well. So this is not so much of a question, but as a comment, not just for you know, the work that you're doing right now for your IP and the podcast, but you know, your videography of your performance for the fall term, your dance performance was just so wonderful. And I have a feeling that you wouldn't have had those skills had you not had this internship. So well done.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Bridget. That was great.
Thank you.
Next up is Bridget Leslie. Bridget is one of those lucky undergrads who was able to get an internship in the field of law much coveted. So that's fantastic. She was interning for Osler, Hoskin, and Harcourt in Toronto last summer, and she's going to tell us all about that. Bridget.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, just give me a second. I haven't been on Zoom in like a really long time, so hopefully I remember how to. Okay, can everyone see my PowerPoint situation?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Just give it a second. Okay, so hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for attending the SASA Learning from Experience event today. My name is Bridget, and I'm a fourth-year student in SASA, and I'm also studying in French. And I'm going to be talking to you today about my summer internship at Osler, Hoskin, and Harcourt LLP. So Osler is one of the major 7 law firms in Canada, so I was very fortunate to get an internship there. Yeah, so they mostly deal with corporate law, as like they don't do criminal or they don't do family, it's corporate, especially like tax and real estate. So that was a very unique experience for me because I have no knowledge regarding that. So yeah. So my position was as a summer student administrator, and I worked in the client development and marketing department. As you can see here, I had a lot of fun documenting my experience on the app Be Real, but more than just the photos, I did basically anything from analyzing data, so website data, as well as data for a specific service that I'll get into a little bit later, to updating lawyer biographies to the website, and also writing social media copy as well as news items. More than just that, those are like the 3 things that stuck out to me, but I also did a lot of just sort of grunt work, so to speak, just because I was an administrator. So anything that people didn't really want to do themselves, I would end up doing, which I was more than happy to do because any experience is good experience at a law firm. So just to go over my presentation a little bit, first I'm going to talk about the goals, so what I wanted to achieve from this experience and what I actually did achieve. Then I'm going to go through some of the relationships, so everyone that sort of guided me through my summer role and taught me valuable skills, and then some tangible results of my internship. So first, I think I pretty much had 3 main goals when I came into this internship. I really wanted to develop on both a professional and personal level, because I've had a lot of jobs before, but I had never had a job in like a big office tower in like the corporate Toronto world. So it was a very big adjustment. And I think I honestly did a pretty good job. I really learned a lot about how to communicate with my superiors, as well as like lawyers in the firm who maybe were a little bit less agreeable, because there were a few people like that. But I think by the end of the summer, I was very good at communicating both over email and in person throughout the office. And it was my first, I guess, like big girl job. So I made that adjustment very well. And I think it really prepared me to enter like the workforce after I graduate. So the other thing that I wanted to do was gain knowledge about a legal career, because law is something that I've always felt drawn to, but I don't have friends or family in law. So I was really coming into it blind, and I was able to explore the career from sort of an inside standpoint. I was lucky enough to speak with a few partners at the firm and sort of get their perspective on how they manage their career with their social life and their family life, and what their day-to-day really entails as like a corporate lawyer. And I'm happy to say that I really think that this would be a good career for me. So that was something that I was concerned with, going into law school and realizing that I hate law. But I was able to get like a pretty good perspective on it. And I really think that it's something that I want to pursue. And lastly, I really wanted to make meaningful connections that could help me further my career endeavors, which is what I did. And I'm going to get into it a little bit more. So these are some of the key people that stuck out to me throughout my internship. So first we have Linda, who was my lovely boss, and she is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Osler. She basically handles everything to do with the client development and marketing department. I was lucky enough to work directly under her. She assigned me to many tasks. Most notably, she assigned me to the French language task force, which was created after the introduction of Bill 96. Basically, that bill stated that all corporations who do any business in Quebec are required to have complete translations of online content. So this involved a huge overhaul of the website, and it was quite labor intensive. They're still working on it now, I'm sure. But Linda sort of got me roped into that, and I was able to take a very hands-on role in the administrative duties of this project, which was very valuable, as I was also able to implement my French knowledge. And then there was also Haley, who was sort of like my secondary boss, who helped me with a lot of the lawyer biography updating and things like that. And then Jennifer, who was the one who gave me all of my like news items and social media items that I had to write. And then lastly, Stephanie and Shannon. And Stephanie and Shannon really took me under their wing this summer. I loved working with them, and they were the ones who assigned me, I think, the most impactful project, which was my access privacy, data analysis, and subsequent presentation, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So then just to go over a little bit the like tangible skills that I learned. So particularly Microsoft Excel was always something that I had like shied away from because I found it very daunting. But I was basically thrown into the deep end, and I am proud to say that I came out very skilled and competent on the other side. I had to use Excel a lot over the summer, and I think I have a pretty good handle on the program now. I also did some website updating, so I got to use Kentico for that. And I learned how to write for social media and for the news, as well as some French translation writing in like a corporate setting, which is a very different aspect of the language that I hadn't been exposed to yet. And I also did some proofreading, and then obviously communicating professionally. So the big thing that I did this summer was the access privacy presentation. I was able to analyze data and then make recommendations based on that data that I then presented to a group of executives. My recommendations included, for instance, I wanted to implement a bi-weekly or monthly newsletter over email, which would drive traffic to parts of the website that were very labor intensive to produce, but were not necessarily getting the best results because they weren't receiving enough attention to make it worth the price and the cost of labor that Osler had been implementing to these services. So I presented all this information to a group at the end of the summer, and I think that the information was very well received. This really just helped me to build my confidence in a professional setting, as well as learn like tangible skills about data analysis and how to present sort of jumbled information in a manner that's very easy to understand. So then I don't have much time left, but some key takeaways are that, first of all, people want to hear your ideas. If you have an idea, you should not be scared to say it, because if you have confidence and you know what you're doing, your ideas are probably valuable, and everyone wants to hear what you have to say on a good team. And also, lastly, I know that I want to be a lawyer now. So those are my key takeaways. So now I'm going to open up the floor for some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. That was great. Could I get you to unshare your screen?
Yes. Sorry, 1 second. Okay.
Okay, any questions for Bridget? Katie.
Thanks. That was really great and informative. I think you had a really sort of energized way to present law, which I understand is maybe not always the most interesting or the most exciting to people. And I guess sort of tied to that was you said you didn't really have any prior corporate law knowledge. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious if you can maybe speak to something that was maybe the most interesting thing to learn, or something you're most surprised to learn over that summer experience.
I think what surprised me most is how, I don't know if this is just the experience at Osler, but I found that it was a lot more laid back than I thought it was going to be. So it seems like something that's very, very like serious, and like, you know, like there's no slack for anything, but like obviously it is like a serious environment and it's a corporate environment, but everyone was very, very friendly and just always had time to talk to you and would like be very accommodating of like deadlines and stuff like that. So I was surprised that it was so, I guess you would say, like laid back. Like, everyone took it seriously, but they weren't so serious that it was like overbearing and that it was like a toxic culture. I found that it was a very friendly and welcoming environment, which sort of surprised me. And I was very happy to see that. Mhm.
That's great. Yeah, having a friendly, positive work environment is so important.
Yeah. Mhm.
Michael?
So delighted to hear that your French skills came into play in this. When you think about language proficiency as sort of a value add in business, you know, how did that sort of play in that sort of legal place? I mean, they obviously feel their obligation, right? But it sounds like there were not a lot of people. No offense, but I mean, if they were looking to you, they were short on French speakers, right?
Yeah, so that was sort of what I thought. What ended up happening was they ended up like bringing in an exterior company to do the translations because it was just so much to do. And I found that the people who were capable of doing translations were very few and far between. Like there was not a lot of people who had French proficiency. Obviously, there's the people in the Montreal office who could all speak French, but were busy doing other stuff, you know? So I remember in the beginning, I was emailing the translation department all of these things because I had to be like, we had a schedule. So I was trying to email them all these things and they got back to me and they're like, please stop. And I was like, I can't. This is what we have to do. So we ended up contracting with like an exterior company, and that really helped things, like help smooth things along. But I do just want to say that the language requirement in SASA in first year, I want to thank whoever came up with that idea, because otherwise I would never have done French. And French has been already such a huge asset for me. So I think that's a really, really good addition to the program.
Oh, love that endorsement. Thank you. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, next up is Joyce Dung, who is presenting on her summer 2021 internship with Speak Fluent Speech Services and her 2022 undergraduate summer research internship in anthropology under Dr. Karen Panisi. Joyce.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. I will screen share in a moment. Can everyone hear me clearly? Okay. All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay.
Oh,
No?
not yet. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right. View slideshow. Just a second. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joyce, and I'm a fourth-year student studying SASA and linguistics. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming to the presentation. And I will give a little bit of overview of my SASA EL experiential learning experience. So for my experience, I undertook 2 internships. The first one was marketing intern for Speak Fluent Speech Services, and my second one was working as a student research assistant for the anthropology department in the undergraduate summer research internship. So for my first EL experience, I worked as a marketing intern for Speak Fluent Speech Services, and the company was a Toronto-based speech clinic that provides speech and communication training for working adults. And as the marketing intern, I took on 4 main projects. So the first one was something that I had kind of somewhat of experience in, which was content development for the clinic's Facebook and Google ad campaigns. The second one was mainly writing copy for their insurance coverage and speech workshop web pages, as well as developing email newsletters. And then I was moving on to the areas that I was less familiar with, which was more so on the quantitative side. And that includes updating and monitoring the campaign's performance metrics. And based on these insights, compiling the data into monthly marketing reports. And so in the initial stages coming into this role, a lot of these tasks felt exciting because I was interested in marketing, but also at the same time, it felt daunting because I was managing paid marketing campaigns for the first time for adults, which was a brand new group of target audience that I was not very familiar with. But with these uncertainties, I walked into the role with some specific goals. So these were the questions I wanted to kind of explore in the role, which was, for example, what does it mean to develop an effective eye-catching poster and to write concise and engaging copy for a poster versus a lengthier content for websites and email newsletters, understanding the performance metrics of a social media campaign, and analyzing the story told by the data results from a campaign, synthesizing these findings and important metrics to inform next steps for the campaign. So the first challenge I encountered in this role was during the poster creation stage. I was working on this campaign titled Level Up, which was geared towards business professionals. And the struggle that I encountered was I had little to no client conversions in the initial stages. So what I did was I went back to the posters and I found some of the posters were very clean and aesthetic. For example, the poster on the left, some had wordy captions and others had a very clear visual, like the one on the right. But then when I was looking at them, a common problem that I found was that the poster's captions didn't really clearly communicate what the clinic services is about. So for example, if you look at the poster on the right, it says, nail the business presentation. So I explained the desired outcomes for the audience, but without sufficient context and knowledge of the company, a person who's scrolling on social media, they wouldn't really know what the purpose of this ad is. So to address this problem, I kind of drafted and experimented with different unique value propositions, which are basically statements that address the target audience pain points and desired outcomes. So for example, talking about framing it as a question like, do you struggle with speech clarity and fluency, rather than just saying, improve your speech skills now. And in linguistics, we often consider the ways in which language shapes and is shaped by sociocultural components. So thinking about like audience and creator relationships. And this allowed me to pay attention not only to the structure and content of the words being used, but also, for example, how would a poster be interpreted by audiences with different job backgrounds, cultural and linguistic backgrounds. And other elements I learned was how different elements like images, font styles can also help tell a coherent narrative, as well as including specific elements that relates back to the theme of speech training. And my second challenge was data insights. Another problem that I had for the same campaign was having little to no customer conversions. So my supervisor encouraged me to revisit the campaign's performance metrics and promotional materials to kind of do a little, look for little clues that leads to the problem. And so what I did was I searched for potential gaps in the data from the customer relationship management spreadsheet. And what I found was that there was an unusually high cost per sales qualified lead number. So what this means is that a lot of the incoming prospects brought forth by the posters I made came from a different mix of industries and had different scattered interest levels, but very few of them was actually qualified or would be interested in purchasing the service. So doing a little bit of this contextual clues and problem solving that allowed me to learn how to evaluate the relevant metrics to evaluate campaign performance related problems by analyzing data patterns, like what do the numbers mean, which was a weakness or I guess a skill that I didn't really get to work on from before, but this was a really valuable experience for learning that. And moving on into my second internship experience, I worked with Dr. Karen Panisi from the anthropology department, as well as another linguistic student. And for this project, we explored a research one research question. So how anti-racism is discussed through verbal art performances. So that includes rap, songs, and spoken word performances on TikTok and YouTube. So the first stage, we collected data on TikTok and YouTube by using keywords and hashtags such as BLM poetry, racism poetry, anti-racism songs, etc. And the second stage was classifying data. So this was the stage where I learned to use NVivo for the first time, which is a qualitative research analysis software. And we label each data, each video with their corresponding demographic information, such as artist, individual or group, race, or ethnicity. And what I learned is that ethnicity, or the artist's ethnicity, as well as the source of the video were very two important factors, because that might have allowed us to understand what are their recurring themes mentioned by artists of a specific race or ethnicity, and also other themes coming from a specific platform. And then moving on to a bulkier stage, which was thematic coding. So we organized our 300 plus data tokens by classifying them under thematic categories. And what I did during this stage is I tried to apply the observation first, hypothesis second approach from what I learned from linguistic anthropology. And I took this initiative by creating like a rough criteria for the coding process, which I took rough notes for, as seen in the little image on the right. So that include common themes like family, death, and kinship, the artist-specific stance, and as well as these whether there are significant events that are mentioned by the videos. So, however, the challenge that I encountered was that as we got deeper into the coding process, we found that there were a lot of ambiguous themes or codes that did not or could be fit into multiple themes. So what we did was we applied the same original criteria to analyze the first 15 transcripts, and then we had discussions with Dr. Panisi as well as the team to refine this criteria based on any analysis differences, which we could kind of apply to other videos later on. So for example, if the video is critiquing racism and privilege in general, but it doesn't explicitly relate to allyship, so we could either consider an alternative is to create a different category. So that could be response to racism or oppression, including in order to incorporate these sub-themes under that. And working with this, it allowed me to build on a skill in qualitative research, which I thought was very important, is to learning how to organize data in a systematic manner, especially with qualitative data. The tricky thing is that people say that, oh, it could be very subjective how you organize the data, but that was one way that I learned of how to effectively organize them. And for the outcomes, I was able to organize the research findings based on discursive patterns of allyship and research questions that I was interested in. And we presented this on a Wix blog, which we presented at the USRI conference for the first time. And during the content writing process, the write-up for the blog write-up, I applied this rule of three, which I learned from the SASA 3380Y course last year from one of their LinkedIn courses, which was to use ideas presented in threes to make the experience more interesting and more enjoyable. So I applied this component when I was explaining when our team was trying to explain what performative allyship may look like. So including specific components like selective advocacy or self-declared allyship, instead of just simply giving technical definitions of what they mean. So what did I learn from both experiences? So I had some 4 key takeaways. The first one was interpreting the stories told by the data. So from Speak Fluent, I learned about the important metrics that will tell you how effective your campaign is. For USRI, how we can group themes into groups based on, for example, how racism is critiqued or questioned about. And the second one was tailoring writing styles and presentation content to specific audiences. So I learned that it's very important to, especially when writing content, a lot of the materials that I was working on, it's not about using fancy words, but more so being professional and trying to capture the message in a clear and concise way. And the third one was, along these 2 internship experiences, I learned a lot of new software, not only organizing data files with NVivo, but also designing content on templates like Wix and WordPress, and also looking at social media analytics web pages. And the last but not least takeaway that I had was communicating early and often, which was a struggle that I personally have. So learning to keep open communication. So asking for support early when needed, especially when I anticipate that I have busy schedules, to help delegate the tasks effectively with my team members, as well as being able to be more flexible. For example, giving specific snippets or communicating with my supervisors and teammates early on, instead of like taking all the time being focused on having the perfect deliverable. So that really helped. That was one, I guess, lesson that I really learned from these experiences. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. I'll have you unshare.
Yeah.
And we'll open it up for questions. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Joyce?
I do.
Okay, great, Laura, thanks.
So Joyce, that I have people working in my digital marketing team who wouldn't have that sort of breadth of knowledge on how to do A/B testing on digital campaigns. So I wasn't totally clear. Where were you getting all this, the learning?
Oh, did you mean for the first internship especially?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I actually, for that experience, I just learned a lot on the way, along the way. So I mainly used the Meta Business Suite as a Google Ads for the campaigns. And what I did was I was mostly working on developing captions, developing a variety of captions, as well as posters that was specifically tailored to speech clarity or speech workshops for working professionals. And I would say I did have some advice from my supervisor regarding like strategies, like for example, what are the ideal posting times and dates? But a lot of it was also, I did a lot of independent research about other specific areas, like for example, how to make effective poster for that. And also another area was when my campaign was underperforming, then I also had to do a lot of my own research and then provide that recommendations or next steps for my supervisor and then proceed with it. And so I worked on some things like doing like horizontal or like duplicating campaigns and stuff like that. So I didn't end up actually doing like A/B testing per se, but a lot of it was like online research and trial and error. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other questions for Joyce? Okay, Joyce. Oh, Era, go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick one. I also want to thank Dr. Karen Panesi for being here today as a supervisor for Joyce's second internship, and to acknowledge the richness that has brought to our fourth year class. Joyce's independent research project was so informed by her linguistics training in the anthropology department and also in arts and humanities. And she did a discourse analysis of the Bell Let's Talk campaign, and it was super interesting. So again, just acknowledging the interdisciplinarity of, what the work that the students are doing and how that's enhancing the work that they're doing in their internships, and it's enhancing the work they're doing in their other courses. And it all keeps feeding into itself in this really beautiful way. And I'm experiencing that so profoundly today as I watch the presentation. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I just say that it was my pleasure to work with Joyce, and I didn't know you were doing another internship at the same time that you were working with me, or was it at the same time or a different year?
Oh no, that was a year before, in 2021 mainly.
I see. Okay, I was gonna say, because that would be just incredible to do both of those at the same time. But I'm just really glad to see how much you got out of it, and I was so impressed with the result that you and Sapphire got, and especially because for 1 month of that you were virtually on your own because I was out of the country. So I came back and it was all finished and wonderful, and I was just so impressed with it.
It's It's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Joyce, you've been asked back to speak fluent, is that right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So a little bit on news. For my, I guess, first job, because I wanted to work, like currently I'm not planning to get into master's or anything, but so the supervisor from the speech clinic reached out to me regarding like a full-time marketing position for after graduation. So I had a chat with them and everything worked out okay. So I'll be working there after graduating.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's amazing. Very
Thank you.
impressive. Thank you, Joyce. Our sixth presenter today is Kirat Walia, who developed a creative writing project this year under the supervision of Dr. Aaron Schneider. Kirat.
Hi, I'm just going to share my screen first. Can everyone see the screen? All right. Well, hi everyone, I'm Kirat Walia, and today I'm going to be giving my presentation on my experiential learning project, which, as Barbara put it, was a novelette. So first, I just want to go over what I'm going to be covering today. First, I want to talk a little bit about my reasoning, why I chose this project, what my goals were, my inspiration, all that sort of thing. Then I want to talk about my process. This includes my writing, outlining, some challenges I faced. After that, I want to get a little bit into publishing and what that experience was like for me. Finally, I just want to give a brief insight on where I'm at now at the end of this project and where I intend to go in the future. And then we can open up the floor for some questions. So first, why a novelette and my goals? Both of these are actually kind of the same. So the big one is my affinity for creative writing. It's been something that I've always been really interested in and I care deeply about. Yet I noticed that throughout my university career, I just haven't had a lot of opportunities to do that. So I saw the EL as like a really great opportunity to express myself creatively and find a creative voice. In addition, publishing my own work has been something that's been really enticing to me and something I'd like to pursue in the future. And I thought working on this and trying to get it out there under a self-publishing context would be a great experience to get my work out into the public and, have practice in trying to publish. Finally, science fiction is a genre that greatly interests me. And I think that despite having very high concept ideas, the genre is often able to make very detailed and notable critiques of society, which is something I wanted my work to incorporate. So first, I want to give a brief plot synopsis. Like I said before, my novelette was a sci-fi story, but in addition to that, it was also a murder mystery thriller. Its name is Dreams of Death, and it's set in a society where people upload their minds to a collective consciousness. People are divided by neural implants in their brains and virtual integrations that kind of make them like holograms. And the story itself follows an analyst who's basically like a cop trying to solve the murder of a high-ranking official. But the mystery soon unfolds into a vast conspiracy involving corrupt governments and corporations and all that interesting stuff. So I want to quickly go over some of my inspiration. First was Metamorphosis and the Trial by Franz Kafka. I thought Kafka's themes of absurdism, nihilism, and bureaucracy to be really important to me, especially his view of bureaucracy as this all-powerful, nebulous force that could cause great harm to be really interesting, and it's something I wanted to incorporate. Then there was Neuromancer by William Gibson. That book introduced me to a lot of the science fiction motifs that I wanted to write about, and just gave me a lot of insight into how to handle these topics in a compelling manner. Finally, the filmography of David Lynch was greatly inspiring to me, as I often found his works on dreams and what they mean and their properties to be really interesting. I also incorporated that into my story, as my main character would often have these absurd dreams that would say something about his personality or what he's thinking or the case he's working on. So I want to just get into my early process. After getting this idea, finalized with Barbara, I started working in the summer, and that included meeting with my EL supervisor, Aaron, who gave me a lot of great insight into how to start this project, where to go with it. And he also recommended Neuromancer, which, as I said before, was an inspiration for me. In addition to this, I also set up some initial outlines and initial drafts. However, I found I wasn't particularly happy with that work, as I felt that I was too limited by my outline and it was too specific and didn't allow me to express myself in a manner that I wanted to. So I ended up scrapping my original work and started writing again in September. And I started writing instead of outlining first because I felt that writing gave me a better way of shaping the story and having a better idea of where I wanted to go with the work and having a better structure. However, after the first two chapters, I did write a more comprehensive outline while still making sure to give myself wiggle room for new ideas or just creative expression in general. This includes the stuff about the dreams that I mentioned earlier, as that was an idea that didn't come to me until a little bit later in the writing process. In terms of writing itself, it obviously took me the whole year, and it was certainly a challenging but very rewarding process. Each chapter was around 10 pages, and there were 6 chapters in total. Um, because it's a novelette, I ended up being around 10,000 words. I think maybe a little bit over, but around 10,000. I finished writing in February and I submitted my first draft on February 27th. I submitted a penultimate draft just recently on March 27th, and the final draft will be submitted on April 10th. I want to go over some of the challenges I faced. In terms of writing, I think the biggest challenge was doing character work. I often found that a lot of my characters just weren't really fleshed out and often became two-dimensional or cliche, and I had to do a lot of work to retroactively go back to my work during editing and try to make my characters more nuanced and see them as real people with agency and experiences. In addition to that was my ending. While I knew that I wanted my ending to incorporate this vast government conspiracy that radically changed the way the protagonist saw the world, I also wanted to do it in a way that was compelling and satisfying for the reader. I didn't want it to be something that just came out of nowhere. So I also had to do a lot of work during my outlining and writing to make sure that it flowed properly. Outside of writing, I'd say my biggest challenges were obviously meeting deadlines, as writing this novelette, in addition with all my other coursework, was certainly a challenge. However, I found that as I continued on with my writing process and really became comfortable with my creative voice, it became a lot easier to meet deadlines and get my work done, as finding a creative voice gave me a flow while writing that definitely sped up my process. And then, of course, there was publishing and just that whole new experience. So originally, I wanted to self-publish on my own website, but after talking with my supervisor, Aaron, we kind of decided that Wattpad would be a better alternative, as it was an already established platform where I could get my work out there to a wide audience. I started publishing in early February, and around that time, I had completed most of my novelette. I would upload 2 installments a week, one on Friday and one on Sunday, dividing each chapter into 2 parts. And I made sure, and I got the word out in a couple of different ways. The most prominent way was through social media. I would tweet and post an Instagram story every time I had a new installment. And I think this was probably my most effective way of getting people to read my work. In addition to that was also connecting with the community. I found that just being with the community, like reading other people's work and commenting and just trying to get acclimated with the other readers, was a great way to see who else was on Wattpad, what other work was being created, but also getting other people maybe interested in my work. While I don't think it was nearly as effective as the social media, I still got a lot out of it, and I think I would definitely keep on doing it. Overall, I amassed 85 cumulative readers, which for me, I think was definitely a great success. I wasn't really sure about this process before I went into it, and it was definitely a real treat to see these many people going out to read my work. However, while I am at the end of my project, I do intend to continue working. Obviously, I do have a final draft coming up and the final report, but I also want to re-upload my final draft to Wattpad once I submit it, as I'd like readers to see my fully polished and edited and completed version of my novelette. Finally, working from this experience has given me a lot of insight into publishing, and that is something I would like to do with my work in the future, as I do think that given the opportunity to expand the story and characters, I could definitely create a larger, more comprehensive work. Overall, I'd say that the goals and what I wanted to accomplish when I set out to do this project were achieved. I learned a lot about my own creative voice and how to write a lot in a short amount of time, and I learned a lot about publishing. Overall, it's been a real treat to see this project that kind of started out as a rough idea I was kind of playing around with a year ago turn into something tangible that I can, be proud of. all in all, thank you for listening, and I guess I can open up the floor for any questions.
Thank you, Carrot. Just get on gallery here. That was very good and such a fascinating project you undertook. Any questions then? Karen.
Hi. My question, I guess, is what's the title of your work? Because I'm familiar with Wattpad, and my son actually just did a very similar thing to what you described. Like, he worked with a mentor and wrote his first, book. So I'm going to tell him to go read your things, and so that he can see. And also, I think he likes that kind of sci-fi and thriller and so on. So what's your title? We're going to go look it up.
Yeah, well, the current title is Dreams of Death, but if you want to search it up on Wattpad right now, it's called The Mind Within. I wasn't really happy with my original title, so I decided to change it while editing. So
Okay.
yeah, that was the original title.
So, but we should look for The Mind Within.
Yes.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Sophie.
So you probably know this from living with me, but I feel like I am someone who has like a lot of ideas for writing and doesn't always like get around to like writing everything that I want to write. I was wondering if there's like anything like particularly helpful about like the structure of like having a mentor, or like having like the like process of like doing this as like an EL that like assisted you with like just like the like getting the writing done and like getting like the drafts in and all that, and if there's like anything else that supported you along the way.
Yeah, I definitely feel that struggle. I'd have to say that the biggest benefit was just, the accountability. Like, you had to get it done. I'd say the biggest thing I learned in that regard through this project was just sometimes you just have to write. You can't, I can't speak for everybody, but I am someone who sometimes gets a little caught up in their head about writing, and then I think too much about it. And I just learned that you have to do it. You have to just start typing, and it might be bad, but it's better to have something that's not so great than nothing at all.
Having a pesky EL coordinator send you emails all the time doesn't hurt either, right?
Yeah.
Asif.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. That was really exciting and really awesome. Congratulations on your work. That's honestly so big. And I wanted to ask, just in my experience, because I'm doing something so similar. I know for me, like oftentimes approaching friends and stuff, they won't say it, but like, it's in their eyes. It's like, okay, yesterday it's a poem. Now this guy wants me to read a book. Oh my God, right? Like, so like for me, like it's a huge hurdle. I always find it, and especially when I'm going up to people that I respect as like somebody who I want to read that, and somebody who I'm, thinking of as a mentor in some kind of way. It's really hard for me to like, be so presumptive to be like, you ought to read this with your time, like, and I know for me that's been a lot to work on. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I have to admit, I kind of have the same feelings about it, definitely. I will say, I think for me, the biggest hurdle in that was when I started publishing, just going on, so because I'm not a very like active person on social media to begin with. So just to go on social media every week and be like, oh, I uploaded a new thing, go check it out. Like that was so weird to me, but I found that it was just one of those things that, because the EO, like I had to do it every week. I had to every Friday, every Sunday, I had to have something up. It just kind of, I guess my hangups about it kind of went away. Like it's faded away after a while, and it was just something I had to do, like out of necessity. So it might have given me some like, uneasiness, but it was like I have to do it. It's for the project. So yeah, I don't know. That was kind of my way of working around it.
Era.
Yeah, once again, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank Aaron Schneider, who's on screen, for his work and supervising our writers and for being here today. It means so much to all of us. So thanks, Aaron.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure, a real pleasure.
So Kira, what one piece of advice would then you give to another student who wants to launch a project like this for their EL?
Oh, wow. I would say just start. I think that is, I mean, I recognize that's kind of vague advice, but when I first started this project way back in the summer, I think one of my biggest hurdles was I kind of got too hung up on, like I talked about this, getting too hung up on the outlining and not feeling like you could make something good. I realize that that kind of thinking where you're so obsessed with just making something great, it doesn't really translate to making something great. It kind of just gives you a lot of unneeded anxiety. So I'd say that I think everyone has something worth saying creatively, and I think you ought to just, take that step because, at the very worst, it'll just not be good, and you could make it better. So I don't know. I think that would be like my big takeaway.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to our last presenter today, who is Sophie Wu. Sophie showed her impressive range of abilities by undertaking a USRI undergraduate summer research internship in 2021 on microfinance in the Statistical and Actuarial Science program under Dr. Ricardus Zitikas, and a 2022 USRI in computational neuroscience, I still don't know what that is, under Dr. Lyle Mueller. Sophie.
All right, thank you so much for the lovely introduction, and thank you so much for everyone's presentation, and also to everyone for sticking through to the very last one. I will start sharing my screen now. All right, I am hoping that everyone can see this.
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So yes, like Barbara mentioned, I've got 2 USRIs I'm going to be talking about. However, I'm trying to kind of maintain like a consistent story with why I did these 2 USRIs in the order that I did. So I am going to go a bit back and forth between them before coming to my conclusions about my like EL experience as a whole. And generally the way that I'm going to frame this presentation, it's in the title there, is I want to talk about tackling mathematics research with someone like as someone with a background in the arts and humanities, like what I think I got out of it, what I think I brought into it, and like how that fed into what I now want to go into after my undergraduate degree. So to start off with, in terms of why I was like really eager to do summer research, I kind of stumbled into math and the arts in like a really like I can't really say accidental, but like not in like a very like utilitarian way. I didn't exactly know like what the end goal for me was. I just knew that these were 2 things that I enjoyed doing. I was having fun doing them. It made sense to major in them. And I knew that I really enjoyed storytelling and problem solving. And I had this like vague notion in my head that if I just like did the things that I really cared about, that I would eventually like find projects that I would also really care about and that I would also really enjoy working on. I wanted to keep learning during the summer. I enjoyed school. I wasn't sure yet if I wanted to like go into industry yet. And I was like pretty comfortable like sticking around in academia, or at least like exploring more of academia. So I definitely also factored into it. And I also felt like research was just like a good place to explore things in general, like just like explore new skills, to like meet new people, try new things. And it just seemed like a really new thing. So I went ahead and I got my first USRI by emailing a whole bunch of profs in the math and statistics department, because that was the summer that the USRI program started in 2020, so like the pandemic year. And I had one prof reach out to me, respond to my emails and say, yes, I'm willing to take you on as a student. However, I sent the application in, did not get didn't actually like get like the research internship, but I kept sending in the application. The summer after, I was able to work with him. So that was Professor Ricardus Zitikas of the statistics department. And then the year after, I worked with Lyle Mueller in the math department. So I'm going to talk a bit about those 2 things now. So my first USRI was looking at applications of machine learning in microinsurance. It was my first ever like independent research project, period. And I unfortunately don't have many images for this section of the presentation, since I did this USRI during a very COVID-y year and a very COVID-y summer. So I spent most of that time just like at home in Oakville, like corresponding with my prof over Zoom. But I did get to meet a lot of really cool new people through this project, which I'll talk about in a bit. And originally my like angle for why I was interested in this was that it just seemed like a really important issue that I might be able to lend my skills to. So the whole idea behind microinsurance is that you are able to provide like smaller insurance packages to people who don't have access to typical insurance. And the target that we had with our project were people in remote communities who had like agricultural businesses who would oftentimes have their businesses get like really disastrous consequences when the weather wasn't very great, and there's not like a lot of access to like typical financial services for these people, and our idea was that like we could research how we could use machine learning to like implement like better data analysis to like provide like more fair insurance to them, like cheaper insurance. Like if we were able to like better predict like how bad the weather would be, then we could like like not have to charge them as much, and still offer them protection against that sort of risk. So like the professor that I reached out to, they said this could be a good project if you're interested in just like the intersection of like humanitarianism, like making the world a better place, and also implementing mathematics. And I said, okay, that's cool. That sounds interesting. That sounds up my alley. I'll give that a go. So the way that the summer worked for me was my prof had a really like laissez-faire approach to how I could do the research. Like we would correspond like maybe once a week, and like just like do a quick Zoom call about like what was going on. And in terms of the support that I was offered, he gave me a lot of like freedom with what I could, or like with what I should and shouldn't explore. So that was good in some ways and bad in some other ways. Like in terms of like the really cool people that I met throughout this project, I realized that I really had to like go out of my way to find my own data, find ways to actually like make my research like implementable like in the real world. So I like had to like find a lot of people who were actually working in microinsurance, or like researching microinsurance like on the ground. So that was really cool because it was like a COVID year. A lot of people were willing to like do Zoom calls and to just like talk and give their data. So I thought that was one advantage of being stuck at home, or like everybody being stuck at home. I also had to like learn how to just learn on my own without having like the pressure of like short-term assignments and short-term like tests, like those sorts of deadlines. So that was also definitely a new skill. So even though these were challenges, these were also like things that I was like able to like pick up throughout the research project that I think like helped me with like future projects in general too. Yeah, there were a lot of challenges with doing this project. 3 that I've listed here, but in general, I wanted to like conclude this project by saying that I learned a lot about not just what I enjoyed researching, and like the like skills that I could learn from research, but also what kinds of research I like didn't particularly enjoy. I realized that this project was like a very marketable project, but I oftentimes felt very frustrated with like trying to justify that this was like a humanitarian project when at the end of the day, there were like a lot of limitations with what we were working with. And I realized that those limitations might be what I was more interested in exploring in research. So that leads me into the second project, or the second USRI that I worked on, and my first time in a lab, my first time like being in like a working group of researchers instead of just like being on my own and like corresponding with a professor who was more or less just giving me like the freedom to like do whatever like I thought might be like best for a research project. So in terms of what was different about this USRI, that's a picture of the WIRB, Western Interdisciplinary Research Building, that I took over the summer. And that's a picture from like the Muller Lab website. There was like an actual physical space for people to meet. I like went in there, like treated it like a 9 to 5, like actually like interacted with people like on like a daily basis, had like a lot of informal conversations about research like throughout the summer. And I generally just felt like it was a more like lively experience than my first USRI. I felt like there was a lot of support, like not just from my supervisor, but also in terms of just like, like informally talking with like the like PhD candidates or like master's candidates or like other undergraduate researchers there. And like having that sort of like support network really helped, like, because whether you were talking about research or just like how your day was going, it just felt like what you were doing was like more connected to real people. So what I researched was the difference. I'm trying to keep this like as like not technical as possible for the purposes of this presentation. But more or less what I researched was like the difference between like biological and artificial neural networks, which is a topic that's getting increasingly relevant. And I realized that I, again, really enjoyed researching like the limitations of computation and not just like what computation can do and the possibilities of like it like being able to like really help people and like really like revolutionize the world, but like also like what it can't do and like how understanding those limitations can like give us a better understanding of our relationship with technology. So what I really enjoyed about this experience was that because I was like constantly talking to other people about research informally, like there was also the environment to like formally talk about research on a consistent basis. We had like weekly meetings where like if we wanted to, we could present our research. So I did that with like the other undergraduate researcher at the lab like multiple times throughout the course of the summer. And we had to like constantly think while we were doing the research, like not just like what makes for good research, but also like how do we make our research presentable and how do we like tell the story that the research is trying to say in a way that like can be understandable to everyone in the lab. And everyone in the lab had like a different background. There were people who were like coming in from medicine, people who were coming in from like pure math. So thinking about that, I thought was something I really enjoyed. So my biggest learnable from this whole experience was what research actually looks like and what the actual like day-to-day process of it is. I've got a picture here of the two papers that I produced for these two USRIs. That were published in the USRI conference. I've also got a picture here that was taken at our lab on Halloween when everyone was dressing up. I realized it, on the one hand, shouldn't be as scary and intimidating as I thought it would be going in, that tackling a lot of imposter syndrome, that was only really possible when I just like put myself in places where I had to like challenge myself to know that I could like do the things that I wanted to do and just by like trying to do the things that I thought I couldn't do previously. I come to realize that like research can be a very supportive community and that it's very important to have that support and to have people that you know you can like ask questions to and who you know who can like offer you like the opportunity to like grow and who like most importantly like are on the same team as you. Like it can like I feel like outside of research, like in like the classroom, sometimes learning can feel competitive. Like something I've really enjoyed about research is that it isn't actually competitive because most of the time you're on the same team. You all want to learn about the same things. You all want to contribute to the same project. I think most importantly, and I think this kind of ties down to like what Kirat was talking about before, that it just like feels really good to like finish a project and to like have deadlines and things that hold you accountable to like getting those things done and like having something that you just made at the end of the day. So thank you all for listening. I have fully used my grace period as someone talking about two USRIs, but I wanted to give a special thank you to my supervisors, all the friends that I met at the Miller Lab, and all the STEMI academia support that I've like gotten along the way from all those people. I wanted to also thank Barbara for everything EL related. I have personally enjoyed those pesky emails a lot, even though I haven't always been the greatest at responding to them. They've definitely helped make this experience a lot more connected to everything that I've been doing in SASA and everything else that like has made me enjoy school. And of course, thank you to SASA for making all of this possible. And thank you to all of you for listening again.
Thank you, Sophie. What amazing experiences those were. Any questions? Kirat.
First, I just want to say that was a great presentation, Sophie. I thought it was really interesting. You talked like about your research experiences and how that was positive for you, especially with that second one. I was wondering if you could, just given your experiences, how do you think research as a community sort of thing could be bettered, like with interactions with other researchers? Like, how do you think that could what could change about it, if anything?
So I've thought about this a lot since, like I mentioned, I've had like varying degrees of success with like feeling like research was like a communal experience for me. And I think something that I really take like inspiration from in the sciences that I hope to like carry with me, because I want to continue doing research in the humanities, and I'm pursuing like a master's in the digital humanities in either this September or next September, is like, I think there's something really important about having like a shared goal with your research and a shared idea of like what makes for quality work that can be like shareable and presentable. And I think in some ways the sciences has done that really well. not so well. In some ways, the arts and humanities has done that like really well and not so well. And I think like reflecting on the like respective like strengths and weaknesses of like how different disciplines have done that, and like trying to like merge that together is going to be like really, really key when it comes to making research in the future more accessible. And it's a really vague answer, but that's also because this is a question that I think I'm going to be thinking about for a very, very long time.
Other questions? Era?
Thanks so much, Sophie. That was so interesting and exciting. And my question has to do with how much did these 2 USRI internships influence your decision about what you want to do next? Like where you're going after you graduate?
A lot. I like for one thing, I like in my statement of purpose for the graduate program that I applied to and that I will most likely be going to next, I like talked a lot about how these experiences shaped like what my like interest in the digital humanities looks like. Like I actually briefly mentioned that like a hesitation that I have about the digital humanities is that sometimes it might be like trying to sell like the digital part of it too much at the expense of the humanities part of it. And I think a lot of my views on that were informed by my first USRI, where I was working on microinsurance and like enjoying learning about a lot of technical aspects of it, while also realizing that the work I was doing was like getting funded because it was like marketable more than because it was like impactful. And I also like think it like definitely helped in my like application and in like when I was like reaching out to researchers at McGill and stuff about like possibly working with them, that like I at least like had some computational experience so far. So yeah, it's like definitely like been like really good at like helping like I don't know, like me with these next steps.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to having you come back as a guest speaker in the SASA Speaker Series in a few years' time.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
Any other questions for Sophie? Okay. Thank you so much, Sophie. That was great. And thank you to all our presenters today, and congratulations on the great jobs you did on your presentations and on your experiential learning opportunities. You make my job an absolute joy, although I'm really self-conscious of it now after what Steve said about being a coordinator, but I really do love working with all you guys and seeing just what you're doing and how you're going about changing the world. You all just impress me so much. And thank you again to our guests for joining us and for supporting our students and our program. We just, really, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you. I will be posting the presentations along with the students' final reports on their experiences in SAS's Scholarship at Western page. And the video of this event will be posted on our website once I get a few minutes to edit it. So please, follow up and also, again, if there's Sophie's papers are on the Scholarship at Western page too. So lots to review. With that, I'll send it over to Era for some final words.
Thanks so much, Barb. I want to reiterate some thanks, but first of all, especially I want to thank Dr. Barbara Bruce. Thank you, Barb, for your expert stewardship of our experiential learning program. I don't know if people appreciate how much work Barb does to cultivate partnerships in our community, on campus and beyond the community, and then to organize and assign experiential learning credits for every single student that suits them. It's such a big draw. It's one of the big attractions that I'm hearing about from applications to the program. There's also the supervision of each student as they go through, and the encouragement and the pesky emails, and then organizing this event. So Barb, thank you so much for all the work that you do. It's really just amazing. It's a wonderful contribution. I want to also say thanks to our friends and our guests who are here. I saw that we had advisory council members and friends and supervisors and co-students. I see Shai and Rachel are zooming in from the satellite project space where the 4th year capstone project is on display right now. So make sure to go down and check it out. Thank you to our students. Thank you so much for sharing what you've done and what you've learned from your experiential learning credits in SASA. So thank you to Angelina, Joyce, Bridget Koza, Bridget Leslie, Kratwalia, Sophie Wu, Asif Mohammed. You make us so proud, all of you, and you should be proud. Thank you so much. And with that, I hope you have a great weekend. We're going to close the program for the day. I also need to thank Jennifer Tramble, who's on the screen and who has been sending the timing warnings to the students and basically running everything in the background so smoothly. So have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks again for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.